Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being with us tonight. It is our amazing pleasure to welcome you to this webinar that has a very specific purpose. We want to learn about what migration really means from three amazing ladies that will share with us from their own experience, from the experience of their communities, and hopefully will engage us in addressing some of the issues that need to be addressed. I know that many of our participants in the audience are social workers, social work students, or professionals that are working with or on migration issues. So I think it is the right time to discuss this issue. Not only that, but as you all know, on Monday, it was the 8th of March, International Women's Day, right? And what an amazing way to celebrate women tonight. And we will start with these amazing women that we have with us. But I want us to think about all the women around the world that on one hand are dealing with challenges that way overpass the challenges of other population groups, but on the other hand are also proving resilience, agency, amazing leadership and strength. And that's what we want to be inspired of and what we want to learn from. My name is Marciana Popescu. I am a professor at Fordham University, and I'm here tonight with my colleague, Dana Alonzo. And we have the opportunity to, conduct this seminar, lead this seminar, facilitate this seminar, this webinar. See, I'm still not thinking in remote terms after 1 year. But we also have the opportunity to share with you some of the work that we are doing at the end of the webinar. So hopefully you'll stick with us to the end. I will get us started by introducing two elements that I think are extremely important for us throughout the discussion and the stories you'll hear tonight. The first one is forced migration. When we are talking about migration, it is really important to know what kind of migration are we talking about. When people decide to move because it is their right, because every human being has the right to movement, free movement. When they decide to move from one place to another, they can do it freely, they can have a range of choices, and that's one aspect. That's not what we will be talking about today. Today we'll be talking about instances in which people are pushed out of their own communities, sometimes their own families, their own countries, by a set of forces that give them no other option. Right? So when we are talking about forced migration, it is important to understand this element of force. Now, what is a force that pushes people out of their own communities? The legislation we are currently using is really fragmented. And that's why I prefer that we use one term, forced migration, because per legislation, you'll have people that are pushed out by conflict, persecution, political persecution, religious persecution, you name it, by state actors in as much as possible, or environmental disasters. Now, when we're dealing with conflict and persecution, particularly by state actors, it is extremely easy to I shouldn't say extremely easy, it is easier to categorize this population group as refugees. We have an international convention that establishes a definition, and although the definition is applied pretty discretionary, it can be used to provide a status. Now, when people have a status, they can move with somewhat less stress from one place to another. Now, when refugees get a status of refugees, they can access rights that otherwise they wouldn't, right? But these are not the only forces that are pushing people out. There are other forces such as violence. We're talking about gender-based violence. And we would like to believe and to think that by law, and actually there are some provisions in the law, we would like to believe that women, or let me back up. We'd like to believe that gender-based violence represents in itself a ground for asylum, a ground for accessing a refugee status, a ground for accessing protection. But what we are seeing happening is not quite so clear and so easy, right? You can have community violence or family violence, right? That also pushes people out of their communities. And one of the worst types of structural violence is poverty, economic constraints, total loss of economic opportunities, no hope is what pushes people out. Now, forced migration is characterized by the fact that people are pushed out under extreme stress without knowing where they go and how they will get there. And I think this is extremely important for us to understand, because people that make it to the destination, be it their desired destination or wherever they could access some level of protection, are going through extreme stress and trauma. And yet, when they arrive in a place that is supposed to be a safe haven, that's not necessarily what they encounter. Now, the second element that I'd like to address today is gender. Why are we focusing in on gender when we speak about migration? Forced migration affects everybody equally, right? Not really. Right? So we have levels of vulnerability. And when we are looking at numbers, currently we have 80 million people forcibly displaced in the world. If you want, 80 million people forced migrants, of which about half are women and girls. Half of them are children. When we're talking about women, when we're talking, like using a gender fluid approach, when we're talking of people that do not quite fit our categories, the risks, the vulnerability, the challenges increase. And it is no wonder that some of the international documents we are working with started looking at gender and gender sensitivity in implementing different provisions and trying to access protections. However, how do women fare differently? Well, you will hear some talk, when you talk about forced migration, about child marriage. Child marriage is currently used as a protective mechanism. So when girls are leaving the country, they are leaving married. Now, is this protecting them? Not necessarily, right? What does that mean? Are we dealing with women? Are we dealing with children? How do we categorize them? Do they access services that are targeting minors, or do they access services that are targeting women? That in itself is a major issue. Or you will hear about female genital mutilation. I was corrected one other day saying, you should just say female circumcision. Yes, and we should in some instances. However, we know the harm that is done through female genital mutilation, right? And girls are subjected to this practice. Many of them leave because this is the force that pushes them out. Many of them leave because they are traumatized and tortured through this practice. And then they arrive in countries such as ours, in which healthcare providers understand very little about the practice and about the impact it has on women and girls around the world, right? Then you have women that are basically taking any chance and any risks to escape their communities and their countries. And yet they are arriving here with children. They are arriving here surviving torture, gender-based violence, sexual victimization, and rape. And they are placed in detention centers. Or they are brought in by smugglers, and at the hands of smugglers and at the hands of state authorities, they continue to be victimized. That's why we talk about gender. Women that arrive in refugee camps and cannot access reproductive health, or they cannot access mental health services. And they come with a different set of needs and challenges that need to be addressed. Women that come here with their degrees and they need to survive. So there is a whole set of skills and knowledge and expertise that is being lost by some of the most important caregivers in our society. That's why tonight we will be talking about forced migration through the lens of gender. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marciana. I think it's really helpful to have you present for us some of the key issues that we're going to be focusing on. But what I'm really looking forward to, and what I hope we really have an opportunity to do, is hear from our guests tonight and their experiences, their personal experiences, the experiences of their communities, and the individuals living through this process. So if we can just have you introduce yourselves to our audience so they know who's here with us tonight. Niurka, if you want to start. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. My name is Niurka Melendez. I'm really glad and honored to be here today with you. an asylum seeker, Venezuelan asylum seeker who fled my country in March 2015 and became asylum seeker in February 2016. Along with my husband, we founded an organization, a non-profit organization named Venezuelans and Immigrants Aid, basically based on the own necessity that we, as an asylum seekers, but first as a foreign migrants, found us in the middle of this ground and this city. I also volunteer as a Spanish speaker interpreter. And of course, it's my pleasure to be with you tonight and answer any question you might have. Thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Elvira.
Okay, my name is Elvira and I'm a queer LGBT woman, asylum seeker from Russia. I will say more when it's my part.
Okay, thank you, Elvira. Andrina.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Maria Andreina Zuluaga. I am Venezuelan as well. I'm psychologist, social activist. Also, I am a risk volunteer. I am asylum granted. I stay living here for 2 years ago. I had my no-profit organization from Venezuela, and now I am registered over here in New Jersey. So I really feel glad to be here, be part of this panel. And thank you very much. I am really open to show you my experience, my history, my way to be here, and how I can deal with all these topics about gender through the migrants and how to be migrants here and how this experience are changing my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we're so pleased you are all able to be with us. And we were hoping that we could start with hearing some of your stories. If you could share with us, based on your experience or the experience of others in your community, if you could share with us some of the unique factors that contributed to your migration or to women's migration, forced migration. If you could talk a little bit about what it is from your perspective that you think leads women to make the decision that they have to leave their country.
May I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. Based on my personal experience, I didn't realize when I came first to the US that I was a forced migrant. I never even know about the term. And I think if we check back the logs in the UN agency, they started to talk about forced migrant from my country, I think 2-3 years ago. Mm-hmm. So imagine the people that is in that case start to understand first that they become this kind of migration, right? And if you ask me as a woman, firstly as a mother, I decided to take this decision here in being already in the US, and it was because of my son, my child, my only child. Otherwise, knowing myself, I think I wouldn't left Venezuela. But it was again a necessity, and hearing from the community we work for, is basically for those who have children because of their children, and for those who don't have children, is because of the seeking a better quality and seeking a place where they can refresh or recall themselves about not being their basic human rights being violated. So that's the quality of life that, in the case of Venezuela, people decided to flee.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Elvira or Andreina?
So my experience is a little bit different because I am a LGBTQ woman, and the reason for leaving my country was mostly based on the discrimination and harassment and stalking based on my orientation. But I think that it was also connected with the fact that I'm a woman, because in Russia, the level of suppression against women is really, really hard. Maybe it's not visible, and maybe other countries it's not well known because everybody knows about political issues, issues about orientation, but not issues with women. But fact, if a woman is alone, if she doesn't have husband, like the empty, like nothing. And if this woman is also a lesbian, it's double nothing. So she has to be corrected, and she's not respected at all. She doesn't have a place in the society where she could belong. And in our city, we faced with a real stalking from a group of men who wanted me and my wife to connect with them, I think, in a certain way. And they visited our place in the middle of the night. They called us. We never gave them our numbers. They left the messages, and when they understood that nothing helped, they began to use gun. That's right. It's St. Petersburg, the second biggest city of Russia, and they used gun, and they just shut our window. And one time they shot my wife, and her leg was injured. It's true story, though it sounds like a film scenario. And certainly we tried to ask for help. We went to police, but we didn't get any help, and also we didn't get any help from our friends because in Russia it looks like they are trying to date us. They just like us, and we should be flattered. Uh, so we were not, and we felt completely helpless. And I think that's when we understood that we will not get any help when the situation becomes worse. And it's a reality because in Russia, the level of torture against women is extremely high for now. Women stalking, beating near their homes, they are killing, they are dying, and nobody does nothing about it. So we decided to escape. And yes, we chose the US because we wanted the law to protect us. We wanted to believe our police, I mean the police of the country we live in. We wanted to be sure that the law is for us and not against us, and that we can ask for help. But I can say that here we also noticed that we rarely need to ask for help because here the mentality of people is different, and that's the most important. Uh, so what I wanted to say is that yes, I also didn't know the term forced migration, and for us it was mostly a challenge. It was not easy. It was super stressful because everything is different. You are a stranger, different language, different people. You don't know what to do. You don't have your family here. You don't have money because money was not the issue when we live in Russia. And here our financial situation is, I'm sure, worse in Russia. But you feel safe. And that was the most important for us. And maybe um, it can be related to our gender because a question of safety for women, I think not only Russian women, Russian women, is very, very important in our world. And also, I want to say that I'm glad that there are places where women can go because I think that few hundred years ago there were no such. And for now, at least, we have hope that somewhere we could live more safely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think you brought up such an important issue of safety. And whenever we talk about gender, that becomes even more central. In many of the migration protection mechanisms, that's the one thing that matters, and yet it is missing. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And we're glad that at least you can see some hope for safety here.
And just also, the other thing that I hear that really stands out for me is, despite the difficult circumstances that you were having in your country, your first instinct was to look for support and help there, right?
Yes.
And in your community at home. And that was the decision to leave, was really out of not finding those resources and not having.
Certainly, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Andrina.
Yes. Oh, my history was I don't really want and plan to be here for a long time. So I had to take the decision like forced migration, because I was making a lot of things in my country with my no-profit organization. I am psychologist, and I was working there with political prisoners and their family. So my work over there, it came me in against the government. So when I been here, I just only was planning spend some time here in New York. They sent me some reason like legal appointment. So I really felt fear about myself, because I know how the government works over my country, and even they work with women. So I don't wanna expose myself to be in a prison and jail, so just only to make my work. I was working with human rights. I was working with political prisoners over Venezuela, which is really, really difficult, because you had to listen, you had to hear all these traumatic situation, and you have to know how difficult time they spend over the prison, and how their family, it really was impact negatively. People suffering due to paranoid episodes or panic attacks, depression, anxiety. So it was really, really good to me bring my health over my country with my folks over there. And I don't really plan to be here for a long, but I had to do it. I never mind, I had to do. And it was very difficult to take the decision, because I had to leave all my family over there. I had business over there. I had my organization over there, my careers, my skills. So it is really frustrating experience, because you had to start again. You had to start from zero. And to me, it was in the beginning, it was really hard, like to try to involve myself. And I think my experience working in a nonprofit in my country, they put me in a place where I can like feel confidence, looking for help, like looking for organization over here, looking for people from my country over here. I start to think about the fact to request asylum, because this is my only way to, and in fact, this is my only way to be here, like in a legal status. So I could understand you, like Ninoska and Nurka, and also Elvira, how it's hard to take the decision without you really want, like how the forced migration impact your mind and your identity, because it's like restart. Like when you are playing a game and you lost, you had to restart. So now I feel glad to talk about that and to be smiling about this topic. But I really had, and I really passed through difficult times. So they put me like I am really do a lot of things over my country, and I cool. I want to keep my work over here, but I had to be really realistic. I know I had my career over there, and I know my skills. It will if they come with me. And yeah, I am in the way to try to get more solution, not just only to me, even to my community, even to people suffer due to the forced migration. And also now in this point, from my organization, I'm working in a project and it's against the traffic and trafficking in the border.
Yes.
Starting between Venezuela and Colombia, and we can reply in the border between Mexico and United States.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. And I just wanted to add one thing, Dana. Sorry for stepping in, but it is very important what you mentioned. You know, like this, like we didn't want to leave, and this is something very, very specific for our audience to understand this better. This is very specific for forced migration. People do not choose to leave; they are forced out. And not only that, but when they leave, there is a lot of loss that happens. You know, you lose your family, you lose your community, sometimes not knowing if you'll ever see them again. You also lose your identity, right? You lose your, as Andreina said, your professional identity. You have to find and rediscover yourself in another country, and you don't always know how you will do that. So I think these are extremely important elements, particularly for women, because we are nurturers. We live within the community. We are community minded. So all of a sudden, all your, roots in a way are being severed. So this is something that makes women's migration so much more problematic and complex. So thank you so much for mentioning that.
Can
I speak?
Yeah, of course.
I just wanted to add only a few words to your speech. And you were totally right that it's really hard to leave all your family and life behind. I just wanted to add that there is a small detail that is always like forgotten when people speak about asylum seekers, but maybe it's important for understanding us, because asylum seeker status, asylum status has a one very special detail. You cannot come back to the country you escaped. I don't mean you cannot
Yes.
come back and live there, but you cannot come back for a week or a few days to visit your
Yes.
grandmother, to visit your mother. You cannot do it because you can be punished for it, because it seems like you don't need protection anymore. So I think that it's totally not right, because we are escaping to be protected by the US law. And even we are coming back to our countries as West, we are coming back as USA citizens or green card holders. That means that the US laws still protect us. And that's a really important difference.
Yes.
And this impossibility of visiting the motherland, even for a few days, even when your relatives are dying or they're really ill, it's a big factor of stress, certainly especially for women, because women are raised saying that they have to protect their family, they have to take care of the older relatives, and for now we just cannot see them at all. So it's a big.
You've all shared a similar, as was pointed out, you've all shared the significant losses, right, that become part of this journey, right? Leaving behind family, leaving behind work, and coming someplace that's entirely new and having to start all over again and not knowing exactly what to expect. But despite that, you've all find yourself now in positions of advocating and supporting for other women, right, who are going through this process, or others in your community. So maybe you can help us understand how it is that you got to this point to where you're advocating for others and supporting others. Where did you find the resources you needed to do that? What helps you fight for others that are going through this experience, and what would you say to others who want to be part of that work? Maybe Niorka, because we know you.
Yes, sure, my pleasure. Yes, based first in my personal experience, what made me, continue moving forward in the new path was basically the surprise that was for me, knowing that not all the organization, but at least plenty of the organization I went to ask for help, they didn't understand our cases. I'm not talking about a specific legal consultation for a person who is my thinking of applying for asylum, nothing like that. Just trying to find myself in a world where I was maybe considering the possibility to remain in the US. And what shall I do in the meantime? What could be the case for me and my family to remain at least under a legal immigration status? I found nothing, because they were mostly focused on undocumented people. I had my passport. People who are under a specific visas, immigrants, what they call, and I don't like it, illegal alien. I prefer to call them under an irregular status, right? And it wasn't my case. I entered by the airport, which most people do sometimes, right? And I got my I-94. So trying to explain that, first understand myself, and then trying to explain that, engage me in that moment. No, we have to do something. That cannot be possible in a city, specific city in New York, where they call themselves a sanctuary, welcome immigrant, which is, I'm not saying that it's not right and that's not true, but I'm saying that in that moment, what I felt based on my experience was they didn't know. They was just set for a specific pattern that they maybe knew for years before, but I didn't know about the reality that nowadays migrants can face. This is nothing because I am explain that also, sorry, this is nothing because I'm dream of the American dream, nothing to do like that. Try to explain that to people, engage me to, you know what, we have to explain that and educate our community, even those who were here, Venezuelans, the same community like me, Venezuelans who were here and decided to leave Venezuela maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because they were looking for better life. Even for them, to explain them what was my feeling in that moment, what was my rejecting everything that at least make me think of remaining in the US. So trying to explain that was the first thing that engaged me to, well, we have to speak out and start to explain people about this phenomenon. Then hearing people talk about diaspora and exodus and finding the dictionaries like that, exactly like that, the exact definition. I said, no, we are not this. Because no, we have to explain about forced migration.
Yes.
In a way that people understand based on your own case, what we are talking about, what is the phenomenon, why people can feel sometimes that they cannot do it, even though the possibilities might be there, but they are something inside, really inner inside us that we don't see ourselves in this situation, right? Because maybe because everything is just a sudden that we have to digest everything at once, and then the system. Of course, and this is a I don't like to call it fight because it sounds really strong, but this is a task a homework that, from my point of view, never ends. Never ends. We have to keep that thing always in our mind and reminding people when they know us and they know about the work we do. They think you already got your asylum or you are already a green card holder, and we say, no, we don't. And with our own experience, we show people the weaknesses that sometimes the system may have. And
Absolutely.
it's calling the state a safe place. Excuse me, let me tell you, yes, I feel safe. There is nothing that I can be afraid of about my neighbor. That's right. There is nothing that I can be afraid of saying, I am not agree with that. But still, there is something that we still have to keep raising awareness about the immigration policies.
Yes,
not just
absolutely.
in the US, because we see carefully in the region and in the world about this phenomenon that they like to call us, because we're the second for biggest displaced in the world after Syria, which is a lot to say. So we can see countries such as Peru, Brazil, when they still are asking the displaced people, oh, well, you have to give me this and that, and say, excuse me, are you aware about the conditions? But still, again, there is the system, maybe for years and years, centuries, that has been this way, but now, again, we have to digest, not just the system, also the organizations, digest what this means, not just for me as my mission, my vision, but also for what can we do for them to contribute more to those countries who are opening, maybe being aware or not, their doors for them. So that's the thing that I'm still, as you can see, I'm really passionate to talk about this, because I think this hasn't finished. We have to keep this saying as a homework. And this the thing that from my personal experience still kicks me, being engaged about raising awareness.
Thank you so much. And actually, there was a question in the chat that I want to get to be sure we get to, in relation to what Nurka said too, because I think it is important to get to this question before Nurka leaves us. I know she needs to leave early. The question was asked, are undocumented immigrants in the United States protected more than legal immigrants? What do you think? So, Nurka.
That's a good question. I'm so sorry, Andreina and Elvira, allow me to be first. But what I felt when I came in 2015, that there were more places who were able to help undocumented people than those who weren't, like me, without with my passport. But it wasn't my fault. I just had my passport with me, with my passport seeking a legal status. So again, this is not to put them like a, yes, you are the group that there is more, people care more about you. No, it's just introduce another item that is there. It's there in front of you. And allow me to add another thing that might be connected or related to this question, which is a recent announcement about the TPS for the Venezuelan, not just in the US, which was last Monday, right? But also Colombia.
Yes.
It's part 2 weeks ago. But again, we are talking about this example in the US. We are so grateful, and I told you so, Marciana, when you sent me an email, and other people here in this group, and thank you for that. But still, we are thinking about how me, Niurka Melendez, with his family, my only child and my husband, can think and plan in the near future without having that limits, 18 months, 2 years, 1 year. Would you mind consider the country conditions the same way you did to say, let's do a temporary status, to just consider those, including me, who are waiting for the claim, the asylum claim, for more than 4 years. In my case, 4 years. There are people in my community that have 6 years waiting. Can you consider the same country conditions for the asylum claims, instead of having each of one explain you why I feel fears when you are recognizing a criminal thing down there. What I don't want you, don't take me wrong, I don't want you to take this into a political opinion. Nothing to do like that. I just want to create that awareness in which we can just pass from the mic to the actions. If you are telling me in front of everybody and you are a person who has the power to do at least the first step, can you please consider this? Can you please consider this? That will show me that you are really being not serious, but you are really being sincere when you say this is a country condition that put their life in danger. So consider that for a really permanent resident and legal status that cannot just make me feel, well, I can plan for now on, let's talk about 20 and 25, but also think of the reunification of family. Because most of the women we serve, they decided because of economic issues or whatever else they had, just to leave their family behind, while I can just send money doing whatever I have to do in order to survive me in here, plus my family in there. Any of these temporary protections can even give them a light for their reunification. And that is a point in which we have again to keep pushing and pushing and telling things, out loud.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, what really stands out about what you're sharing with us is this idea of, for me at least, knowledge is power, right? And how you took a process where you felt like, where you didn't have a source of information because no one really understood what you were experiencing and what it meant for you. And not only were able to sort of get that information yourself, but recognized how important it is that others have access to that as well, right?
Yeah.
How about others? I know, Vara, you had your hands up for a few minutes.
Yes, I just want to share my point of view on the question that was asked, if I can, or
yes,
please.
please.
Okay, I wanted to say that yes, I'm agree with Yurka that this difference between I wouldn't say the treatment, but the opinion of society towards the undocumented migrants and such groups as our group, like we entered here with documents to the airport, we made everything legally, but in the end, it happens like we are not visible. And it's really, really important because yes, America always says that refugees are welcome here and so on and so on, but in the real life, the asylum seeker group is invisible.
Yes.
For example, 2 years ago, the line of people who wait for the interviews was stopped, and for now, people who entered the country later are prioritized against those who entered the country earlier. That means that we entered the country like 5 years ago, and we are still waiting, and we just do not know when our interview could happen. We do not know completely. There is no line, there is no time frame, no predictions at all. But if a person enters the country like today, they have a right to apply for asylum, and they have a right to have their interview in 21 days. Certainly in the times of pandemic, it all became slower, but before the pandemic, it really worked like clock. And a lot of my friends, they got their asylum very quickly, and I'm still waiting. And honestly, it's terrible. It's a terrible factor of stress, and it caused a lot of problems with documents, because we have to reapply for our work authorization. We have to wait for many months to get it again. We have to pay now about $500 for each member of the family to get the work authorization. So we have to pay big money, have a right to work legally, and to pay tax. That's funny. We don't have a right to get a lot of benefits. For example, food stamps. In the times of pandemic, it was extremely important, and asylum seekers do not have a right for them. They do not get it. So I think that you understand that it is a great difference when you have no money and you have no work. So yes, it's really important to raise the awareness to the group of asylum seekers.
Yes.
And same as Erica, I understood how important it was when I entered the US, and I became to understand how it works here. Because when I was in Russia, I didn't know about many aspects. And that's why I think that's why I became the activist of local Russian-speaking asylum seeker group. And I was there a few years, and we tried to, we tried to up, we tried to contact different organizations. We tried to tell them our stories because asylum seekers are invisible, and Russian asylum seekers are even more invisible because we are a very, very small group, and we are discriminated in few ways at the same time. And almost nobody knows about that because the flute from Russia is really small. Okay, for us, it might be big for us, but it's pretty small comparing with those from South America. So we began to speak. We gave interviews. We told our stories. It was not easier to speak and speak again about your traumatized experience. So that's why I know my story. I think that I can't be awakened in the middle of the night, and I will tell it because I was speaking multiple times same story, but I think it's important because people really don't.
Yes.
And certainly, I do not know. I'm not sure that this conference will make a difference, but I think that every situation where we can speak up is important.
Yes.
Like a little drop, but maybe they will form an ocean.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrina.
Yes. Nice. So regarding to the question that Dana put on the table about where do you get the strength to do volunteer work and to do something for your community, and how you get this experience, how do you put yourself in a place where do you supposed to get help, but instead you provide help. So my point is from my work, from my community, I was talking before, I'm psychologist and I was supporting families and political prisoners over my country. Once I've been here, I was looking for help, and fortunately, a lot of organizations like via the New York organization, also REEF and another organization over here helped me to make my case. I had to request asylum by myself because one lawyer is supposed to be so expensive, and I never planned before to request asylum. So after that, actually I am volunteer, like psychological volunteer in over a group of REEFs. I am bringing support over there to people suffer due to COVID, like stress, anxiety, many issues to this pandemic. So even put on the table the the topic to the gender and how to be forced migrant, and you had to experience a lot of the stress in your life, but also how be migrants get the power to feel stronger, not maybe stronger than other people, because I don't really like comparison. But yeah, it's experience, and when you throw into this experience, you could feel yourself stronger than another people that maybe don't suffer about that. So just to let you know, I am Venezuelan because I born over there, but my family is Colombian. So
Wow.
so I represent in myself the second generation of migrant in my family. And it's really hard because my family is migrant. I already passed for a migrant experience, not directly from me, from my father and from my mother, who come from Colombia with nothing in Venezuela. And it's a really poor people, and they get a lot in Venezuela. But also I had to leave my country because my work put me in a situation of risk. So like woman, I don't want to put myself like more risker, just to do my work. I am working in human rights. I am working supporting people to pass through the trauma of jail, of prison, to be political persecuted, to suffer political persecution like me, because 2 years ago, before to leave my country, I suffered a political persecution over there by the Venezuelan government. And this is a really like, it's difficult to me talk about that, but in this moment I really feel safe because fortunately for me, my asylum is granted, and I know the situation to a lot of women like me that they are still waiting. But I can say now with the TPS for the Venezuelan, which is a good news, but it's just the beginning because we had a lot of work to do. And I am really willing to keep my word, and I really willing, and also I am looking for my non-profit status from my organization. So after that, I really feel better to bring my support. Yeah, I really feel glad to be here. I really feel extend my gratitude to Marciana, Dana, also to all the people in this meeting. Let you know I am making some volunteer work in RIF. Yeah, we are women over there, working from women and to women and migrants as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
know, you mentioned something which I think is almost a perfect segue to the last question that we were hoping to hear from you about, in terms of how you feel safe now, right? Because you got your status granted, and that sense of uncertainty and not knowing what's going to happen is now settled. But as you're going through this process, or in your own experiences, is New York City a safe place for women asylees, asylum seekers? Do you feel like there are things that we need to do to improve the community, or what's your experience with going through this process in New York?
Briefing, because I was working in the restaurant industry in Manhattan specifically, and don't really feel safe in their moment because you had to deal with a lot of things. The sexual harassment, not right, like really physical, just to comments and, oh, you are really pretty in your workplace. It's really hard to deal with. So when you are a woman, and I know my false Venezuelans like me, they was suffer for this topic in the workplace. Like, for example, box trying to get some like favor or something like unusual, because you had to keep your respect, even if you had paper or not, if you have a legal status or not. Some people some people want to take advantage of the illegal situation of other, and it's worse when these other like me are women. So New York now, I think now is worse than before. And yeah, when you are working till late on in the night and you have to take the train, it's really risky. I think my experience was not too bad, but no, it wasn't not too good. So yeah, it's really difficult. I was working over Manhattan like buzzer in a restaurant, and yeah, sometimes when I get out late to the work, I really feel fear to get the train, the New York train. So yeah, because more I live in New Jersey, so it takes me like 1 hour to be in home. So yeah, I don't really feel safe in this in this field.
Elvira, do you want to add anything?
Yes. Speaking about safety for a woman in New York, I would say that it's a very hard quest because after a year of pandemic lockdowns that New York especially hard, I think that really the safety of New York is a safety for everybody, not only for women, not only for immigrants. It became worse, really worse, and we all know situations, we all know the problems. And also, I think that in some boroughs, in some neighborhoods, it's worse than in others.
Mhm.
However, I would say that for me, New York always was a very safe place. For example, I love to walk in the late evening or even during the night. Sometimes I used to visit the bakery like in the middle of the night when they work 24 hours. I can see is that me and my wife, we always felt safe in Bushwick. We felt safe in Crown Heights. We felt safe in Upper West Side. But I understand that people are different and situations are different. And I heard about many bad situations, not only with women, but with men too. But it always involves some aggressive people who identify themselves as men. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, though I cannot say that we faced with a real aggression, or if me or my wife, we are really afraid to walk right now. And the only moment when I really was afraid to walk in the night was last summer. There were fireworks everywhere. There were aggressive companies everywhere. And I wanted to go for a walk, but my roommate and my wife, they told me to sit at home and to be safe. And I was not happy because I left to walk. Um, but as usual, I'm like, I came here because I didn't want to be afraid. Very important for me because if I'm afraid to live in New York, then why am I here?
Mhm.
So until I am here, I do not want to be afraid, and I will maybe even force myself to go out, to go for a walk, to visit a park that I like. Um, I don't want to be afraid to come back late after work or after a meeting. I do not think it's right when a woman is afraid to go for work when it's late. Just not right.
Mhm.
And I'm just trying to force myself to be brave because if I'm afraid that there's nothing that I have,
Yeah.
because for now being immigrant outside of my country, my tribe, my community, and so on, me is all that I have.
Yeah.
So I want to be self-confident. Also, I want to add that yes, it might be really hard when men come to you, come closer, and it's like night. I like to walk when really late, especially in the pandemic times, because the streets are empty at night.
Mhm.
And when they come to you and they ask, how are you? I understand that maybe they do not mean anything bad. It's like the instinct. It's that with what I'm fighting at. So I think that really important, I don't know, to train ourselves, something like that. I don't know how. But speaking about health conditions and uh, about help that a woman can get in New York, it's another level. Safety, it's a level of safety when we can take care of ourselves. It's not
Yes.
about late walk, no. I can say that yes, I began to feel less protected during the last year, firstly because the access to medical help it, it's harder for now because the lines are longer, the waiting periods are longer. Very often you are offered the telemedicine, but it's not what you need when you have the injury or you have a problem the doctor should see with eyes. And also, I can see that the quality of connection between
Yes.
a person and a clinic it became worse, maybe because they are really too busy, they do not have enough personnel, but it's hard even to call them to get anybody on the phone. And very often people do not know how to help you. For example, during 2 months, I was trying to get Russian speaking a primary care provider for myself to do the annual checkup, and I still am not getting it.
Mhm.
I still didn't find it because all specialists I was offered, in fact, were either not Russian, either they just did not work in that clinic. And once one person that is working here and another tells you no, and again and again. So 2 months have passed and nothing. And it just never happened before. And I hear really a lack of organization, some mess. And it becomes worse because I think that people are not only health professionals, they're afraid, they are stressed too, they are tired. And it's all understandable, but for immigrants who has limited ability
Yes.
and maybe who is suffering from some money trouble, um, it's really harder maybe than for a local who has moved here, has some support here.
Absolutely.
And sometimes for immigrant, this lack of education, it just can make the immigrant say like, okay, I don't need a doctor. I will deal with it myself.
Yeah.
And it can bring some bad things in the future.
So
Thank
part
you.
of
And
feeling, yeah, part of,
So, yes, so I think that it's really important to raise awareness about the situation that for immigrants have some troubles with language, troubles with the accommodations, documents, and so on. It may be harder this whole situation, and maybe they need some additional help.
yes.
absolutely. So part of feeling safe is being able to access resources that allow you to feel like you can take care of yourself, right? And healthcare being one of those things. And it sounds like one of the challenges you're raising that's so important that we've had a chance to talk about more is providers that speak your language so you can really communicate and express yourself. But the other challenge is those providers who might speak your language, understanding what's unique about the experience you've been through in terms of forced migration, and that those two things very rarely coincide, and accessing effective care is
Yeah.
really difficult.
And the other thing that I think it's very important, so thank you, Elvira, for your answer as well. It is important to make a difference between, like people and institutions, individuals and policies. And when we're thinking of a safe space, all these are contributing. So there was a question in chat saying, well, is anybody safe? When we're talking about New York nowadays, it should not necessarily be linked to immigration status. And yet it should, because there are different services that people can access. There are different channels through which people can claim their rights. When they are citizens, when they were born here, when they understand the systems, or when they have people that understand the system, when they are not afraid. One story, one theme that comes up, and thank you, Elvira, for teaching us all that we shouldn't be afraid. Yet, one theme that comes up again and again in the stories for women with experiences of forced migration is fear. In the stories of migrants is fear. Fear of going to the doctor because you might be reported and deported. Fear of going to the police as a woman because either you are coming from a country in which violence was faced with impunity, when committed by different, state actors or people in the society, or because you are afraid that they will not even listen to you here because you are just an immigrant. So I think this is very important to understand the dynamics. And here is where we need to learn from you. We need to all learn together, and we need to address those gaps in legislation and protections that allow these things to happen. So people can feel safe. New York is a safe space to some extent, and not for all. Can we improve that? And I think when we are talking about asylum seekers, and when we are talking about the undocumented migrants, because many asylum seekers do not have documents themselves, so it's a very interesting overlap there. It is important to think, okay, what level of safety needs to be provided by a democratic society, no matter what happens long run. Maybe people will be sent back because, their credible fear interviews will come back saying they do not have a reason to fear. Hopefully that will be grounded and not just decided by arbitrary factors. No matter what, there has to be safety in the process. And when it's safety in the process and people can access due process, then we are all doing better as a society. So thank you for mentioning that. I think that is very important.
Yeah, just to add something, because the concept of safety, it could be like relative. So all that Elvira was talking about, and it's really important, how do you feel really safe? And like human behind, we had a lot of things through on how to feel safe, and mental health support, financial support, work support. So not just only to feel safe because, okay, the street is safe, they're gonna rob over there, or they don't want to attack me, but it's just how you really feel safe if you don't have documents, if you don't have your credentials, if you don't have a work, if you don't have access to mental or health access to medicines or doctors, or like the topic was talking about, like how people suffer like depression would need like medicine, or not just only talking about medicine, it's like therapy support, how they can get support, and how I really New York is safe in a because I really feel thank you for all the organizations that bring me support. And I know it's not just only me. I know a lot of people because, for example, I could go to the English school because one organization opened the doors and I could be there. I can talk about my experience because my English when I been here was worse than now. So yeah, we had a lot of place where we can go to ask for help, like in the language barrier, but also how the safety and how you can describe, how do you feel safe? It's not just only one topic. I think it's a complex concept. So how do you feel safe in your experience, and how you could provide and try to I'm trying to feel better about the process.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's so important. And I think that this is exactly, I think, what we're hoping to get from the project that we're conducting right now, right? Which is the opportunity to learn from women who are going through this process rather than make assumptions about what we think the process is like and what the challenges are and what the best way is to address them, but to really hear from women who are going through this process or have been through this process and are working in the community and have the opportunity to understand the unique challenges. And so we're so thankful that you have been able to be here with us tonight and share your experiences with us. And we'd like to take a couple of minutes to talk about the project, but do we have time for questions? If anyone, maybe one or two questions?
I think there were quite a few questions triggering through the chat. So why don't we talk about the project? And meanwhile, if we have more questions coming in, we can close with that.
Excellent. Okay. So the project that we're doing right now is, I think you just got a great taste of it. We're working with women who are in various stages of the asylum seeking process. And you met three of them tonight, and we're hoping to gather information regarding challenges around healthcare and mental health care access and utilization for people with lived forced migration experiences. We are hoping that through focus groups and through conversations and dialogue where we have an opportunity to hear and learn about these challenges, we'll be able to provide better information and address what was raised tonight in terms of the idea of educating individuals on their rights and timely information on benefits and available resources for healthcare and for mental health care in one's language ideally, and with providers who have some experience working with this population and understanding the challenges. And then developing a training curriculum on health and mental health care needs of women migrants and women asylum seekers, and to use some of the information we developed to meet with service providers as well, to learn from their perspective what it is that they think are some of the challenges for providing care, whether their perspective on the kind of care they provide matches with the kind of perspective of women asylum seekers who are seeking their services and support, and to provide training to them on the challenges for this population so that they're better equipped to provide the kind of care that will be experienced as supportive and effective. And we're hoping to develop an app that can be used for as a forum for people with lived experience of forced migration to share their experiences around seeking healthcare, around seeking mental health care, who they went to, what the experience was like, did it work, was it helpful, should others go, where can they find support if they don't know where to look for it. And so it can be a process of a source of information and providing feedback to others on quality of care and available resources. Marciana, do you want to?
Yes, I actually wanted, we prepared because you have a lot of opportunities as students, those of you in the audience that are students and service providers, by the way, you can actually reach out to us and, like we have your email so we can keep continuing informing you. But I just wanted to quickly share for the students those of you that are interested, actually, I can ask Matthew to send it to everybody, can actually get this form. And this is a form that you will, will give you an opportunity to actually decide, is this project for me? The project has both a practice and a training component. It also has a research component. So we are looking at a commitment from students that will, be for a 1-year academic year from the fall of 21 through the spring of 22. This project that we are working on theoretically ends in December 21, but we do see a lot of hope in renewing it and continuing it in 2022. And in one way or another, we'll continue no matter what, because we are determined to see how we can make a difference. So this is a student application. It can be sent to you. either, I think maybe it's easier to just send it to everyone, Matthew, and then they can, or to all the students if we know who are the students. And then you can fill it out. We will need to get a response from you. It's just a one pager, well, like 2-page max, because we ask you to also write a short paragraph about what motivates you to be in this project. But we'd love to be able to include you. You will get to learn a lot more from these amazing women we have with us tonight, and from many others that can share what it really means to be a woman experiencing forced migration in New York City. And then from there, we can learn what needs to change to really create safe and brave spaces. It starts with visibility, it starts with understanding the process, but then we can go way beyond that. And as future professionals, those of you that are in the program right now, I think this is a great opportunity for you to learn how to really improve practice, listening to the people that are experiencing the current services with all the issues and the good aspects that they have. So we wanted to make sure that we give you an opportunity to learn about this project. And I would hope that we will find quite a few students that are interested. We're also planning to actually link it to an internship that will give you the opportunity to not only learn, but also apply in practice and bring the knowledge that you get from these activists we are working with into the field and really shape services into the agencies in which you will work. So if you have any questions, please let us know. We do have, I will put in chat my email and Dana's. And then you can definitely reach out to us. So this is my email. Dana, can I put yours? Are you putting it?
You can put it, go for it.
Yeah,
So you can definitely, you know, reach out to us, ask us more questions. We do hope that this is just the beginning of actually increasing visibility, because as Elvira said, you know, there is a lot of invisibility when it comes to asylum seekers and to women asylum seekers in particular. So I think this is something we want to work on.
Sorry, Marciana, just the point to Mark. She put on the table one really realistic situation about how the asylum seeker come here like woman, but they are not directly the applicants, they are just the spouse, and they could feel fear about some like make the man or something like that by their spouse because they don't have a legal status over here. So yeah, how to be woman is more vulnerable and is more risky, and some special situations come true.
Thank you.
Was that a question?
No, it's a question.
No,
it's
no.
a comment.
It was a comment.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
But this, I think, is a point of safety as well, and how, like women, we are more vulnerable, and we are like more exposed to suffer some kind of abuse. Not just only had to be like physical abuse, it's also psychological abuse. So it's really important, and it's really like highlight how the forced migration and gender is really hard to women passing through this experience.
Yes. And I just to add to that, I think this actually adds another layer on the fact that we talked about, you know, well, women in general are more exposed. However, a woman that comes here with the husband seeking asylum, both having to deal with the uncertainty of status, has even less resources. Like, where would she turn? Like, where would she go? Family might be back in the country she left. Children need to be protected themselves. Do I go to the police? I don't have a clear status. I don't know how they will react. Would I want to go to the police and report my husband? No, I somehow want to protect. So it's all these dynamics that are extremely important. Yes, and the power dynamics change, Mart. You are so right. You know, women come here, and many times they end up being the only breadwinners because somehow women manage to find jobs easier, and that changes dynamics. And, you know, like the society is different, is shaped different. And that creates other issues that we need to think, okay, how do we work together to identify what are the resources there for women in these situations?
And I think it brings it back to the issue of fear that you were talking about, or
Yes.
has been talked about tonight too, right? And so now you've left behind everything you've known, you're in this new place, you're uncertain of your status and your spouse's, and it's not a safe space even in your home with your spouse, right?
Yes. And yet there are resources, and I hope this is what we can realize through this project, because there are resources, there are organizations that can work with women and identify how to best provide protections. And it is, we shouldn't just give up. We should find these resources, find a support system for women, create support systems, support networks of care between those of us that are here, and going beyond that and see, okay, what are the services that we can connect women to make sure that they really get the right help at the right time.
Absolutely. And making sure that that information makes it to the community, right? So
Yes.
that it's accessible and people know where to get it.
Yeah.
So again, fill out
Any
the
other?
form, and if there's any interest, and we'll follow up, and we're excited to keep going with the project.
Well, if there is no other question, we want to thank you for being here with us tonight, and to thank our amazing panelists for sharing with us stories that are very personal and experiences that are very personal. And like this takes courage. So thank you so much, and thank you for raising your voice. And going back to what Elvira said, when she said, I don't know if this will make a change, it has to make a change. Events like this have to continue, and we have to find ways in which all these add up to changing the image, changing the understanding in the population, changing the kind of discourse that we engage in. So I want to thank every one of you, and I want to thank our participants. And I know we have women activists among the participants raising amazing issues, and we'll continue to address all these issues in as much as we can, working together to find the best solutions. But we're here for you. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll follow up, and we are eager to bring you updates once this project will see a little bit of progress on what is to be done.